Hi, this is Darren from SimNation again. Just wanted to do a quick video for the upcoming draft for WWPF, which of course is the Wolverine Studios Draft Day Sports Pro Football 2023 League here at SimNation. Um, we typically do the first round draft live. We may do second round this year. I'm not sure about that yet, but with the draft coming up, I wanted to kind of talk through the class a little bit and kind of give you some thoughts. Now, a couple caveats here. What you see in front of you may not be the actual draft file with the specific projections when it goes up tonight when I run the sim, but it generally is going to be accurate. So projections could change. Like you may see Peyton Goodwin still be in the first round, but he may not be a top 10 pick. So this is a preload. I will actually load the real file tonight when I run the sim, but just wanted to put that out there. But I'll walk through kind of my thoughts. My thoughts are based on what they did in college. I don't know what the real ratings are. I don't look at that because I also play in the league, and as a commish, I'm pretty committed to not doing that. So these are just my thoughts based on what they did in college and kind of where I think that they're going to stack out based on what I've seen on the screen when I click on them with just their projections. And again, there's been no scouting done, so I don't know if I'm right or not. But so take it with a grain of salt. I have a pretty good track record of being right on some of these. I have missed really wildly on others. So I'm going to go ahead and talk about offense tonight. I'll do defense at a different point, maybe tomorrow. But kind of talk through the offense and just my general thoughts around that. So up in front of me, I have the quarterbacks for this year's draft. Probably a lot of people are going to talk about who's not in this class. So, for those of you who play SNCFL, you're aware that there was a quarterback at the University of Maryland named Marcus Witten, who is widely probably would have been a top 10 pick in this draft. He's a former number one, but he did not come out. He stayed for his senior season, which, as the coach at Maryland, I'm quite happy with because I get him for one more year. But uh, this is not a class to draft if you are looking for someone who has arm strength. A lot of the quarterbacks in this year's draft class are accurate passers, where their arm strength is maybe average to maybe slightly above average, but most of the people in this class are not gunslingers. So, what I would say is what you're going to get in this class is probably a lot of clutch quarterbacks, a lot of highly accurate quarterbacks. Um, and then there are a couple out there that probably do have arm strength, but their accuracy is not there. So I'm going to kind of change this up from the last time I did it. I'm going to walk through who are round one picks and give you my thoughts on them. And then I'll talk about some late finds and maybe some other notables in the class. So Peyton Goodwin, he's out of Florida State. In my estimation, from what I saw in college, he's accurate, he's fast, he's intelligent. He doesn't have the arm strength. I think he's a reach in the first round. He was a five-star out of high school. He was number two in his class, I think. Had some pretty good stats. I mean, 69% completion rate, 65 touchdowns, 24 interceptions, 149.7 QB rating. His personality is not good. He's a dick. But he is a solid quarterback. I just don't think he's a first round pick. He's definitely not a top 10 pick in my book, but I could be wrong. Joseph Clark, now he's interesting. He's a dual threat quarterback. So as the game has changed into 2023, dual threat quarterbacks are becoming kind of more of a thing, right? So in my book, he's not a top 10 pick, but I think I could see him going in the first round because of his dual threat nature. He was a four-year starter, started like 45 games for UVA, who not the best team in the SNCFL, but they're not bad either. He threw for close to 10,000 yards, 81 touchdowns, ran for over 1,500 yards with 15 touchdowns. What you get in him is someone who's very fast, he's agile, he has good accuracy, good arm strength. He's not exceptional in either category. He does tend to miss longer throws, but again, He's someone I could see going in the first round because of his dual threat. I wouldn't take him in the top 10. Um, Osvaldo McKee is an interesting one. I will tell you that if you talk to me at the end of his sophomore season, I would say this guy's going to be a number one pick. He's just really good. And his numbers showed it. In 2 seasons at Miami that he started, he threw around 70% completion rate, had 7,700 yards, 58 touchdowns, 153.8 QB rating, and then he just disappeared. His last 3 seasons in Miami, he barely saw the field. Part of that, I think, is that Gary is his coach, and I think Gary found someone who had a better arm. What you get in him is a very accurate quarterback, but his arm is really, really weak. But you can't ignore those numbers. So I would say don't take him in the first round. To me, he's a third round pick, but I could see someone who wants a highly accurate quarterback going after him. His numbers for his first 2 years definitely supported, and he played at Miami, which is one of the premier teams in SNCFL's ACC, and his coach was Gary. So Gary's a good assessor of talent, so he's worth a risk. But again, I'll take him in the third. Ricky Mullis, he's a product of Alabama, and what I mean by that is he's smart, he's accurate, but he doesn't have an arm. Uh, Alabama throws a lot of short passes. He was pretty good there. In my estimation, again, he's not a first round pick. He's like a third round pick. But coming out of high school, he was the number one quarterback in that class. He's not a great leader. He's not a team player. He's, again, kind of like some of the others. He's a dick. But he had a productive career at Alabama. I mean, 59% completion rate, close to 12,000 yards passing, over 100 touchdowns, a 132.9 QB rating. What you get in him is a pretty accurate quarterback who does a lot of things good, but if you're looking for someone to throw the long ball, he's not it. And again, I'd pick him in the third. Now, the next guy, Fred Burns out of South Carolina, I actually really like him. I think that, in my estimation, he's one of the top quarterbacks in this class. He's fast, smart, agile. He's got a strong arm, but you're going to have to look past his accuracy. He's not the most accurate quarterback. Um, I'm just going to go out on a limb and say he's the first round version of Paul Hollingsworth out of Pittsburgh. He has a lot of, coming out of college, he has a lot of similarities to what Hollingsworth was, which is he has a cannon for an arm. He's fast, he's smart, but his accuracy is not there, which is ironic because Hollingsworth turned out to be one of the more accurate quarterbacks in the WWPF at Pittsburgh. Um, I think he's worth the pick in the first round. I don't think he's a top 10, but I do think he is a first round pick. He's not going to give you leadership. He did bounce around a little bit. He started at Missouri and then moved to South Carolina. But he did throw for 12,000 yards, almost 100 touchdowns, very low interception ratio. He only had like 27. And he had a quarterback rating of 164. So if you're going to take a quarterback in the first round that is projected in the first round, I think he's the guy. Um, some late round finds, and some of these will be a little controversial. Rich Glaze, who is really like, I'm sorry, Craig Glaze. I don't know why I put Rich. But he's a guy who has a great arm, strong personality. Completed 62.5% of his passes, but his accuracy is a little suspect, and it shows up because he's interception prone. Um, he's another one of these guys like McKee, where his first 2 seasons, he was just doing really great, and then suddenly he disappeared. He didn't play in his final 3 seasons. So you don't know what you're getting with him. It would be the easiest thing. But I think if you're burning a late round pick or you're looking for someone in free agency after the draft, I think he's your guy. The next two are kind of interesting to me. One of them is Jimmy Milligan out of Western Michigan. I think you should draft him. Uh, when is up to you, but I would say third or fourth round. If Jimmy Milligan is there, I think you should go after him. He got a lot of trophies at Western Michigan. Stewart was his coach. He's got a good arm, good accuracy. He's smart. He's just solid. Uh, I would say that he only completed like 52% of his passes, but bear in mind where he's playing. He's playing in Western Michigan, which cold weather's in play, right? But he finished with over 12,000 yards passing, 101 touchdowns. He did throw a lot of the interceptions, like 65, but let's be fair about that. A lot of his interceptions came against Washington State, who was kind of like his Newman. So if he's there in the third or fourth round, I would say take him. He's a pretty big reach in the first round. Now, the next guy is probably an example of how players don't always translate between college and the pros. Ronald McCulloch out of Central Florida. This guy is one of the all-time greats in SNCFL. He doesn't have a horrible arm, but he doesn't have a great one. But he is highly accurate. I mean, he passed for over 21,000 yards, 192 touchdowns, against 62 interceptions, a QB rating of 152. He won the Heisman and the Davy O'Brien as a junior, won the Johnny Unitas as a senior. You get accuracy, skill, and smarts out of this guy, but he's not going to win games with his arm. But if you're okay with that, I would say that he's worth going after him. I definitely think he's a third or fourth round pick. But again, you need to have an offense that can support the fact that he's not going to make long throws for you. But if you play dink and dunk or you play middle game passing, he's probably a good quarterback for you. So that's kind of the quarterbacks again. Only guy I really see being a strong first round pick is Fred Burns. I think you could say Joseph Clark. But if your thing is really accuracy, there are a couple guys in this draft for you. Running back, this one is interesting to me. This is a pretty deep class, but not in the first round. Terrell Bryant is out of Boise State. I think if you just think about his speed and his agility alone, he's worth a first round pick. I would almost say he is a top 10 pick. But you need to be concerned about his hands, his personality, and he averaged 3.8 yards per carry in college. There is a dynamic within these games where someone could have off the chart attributes but not be very good. And we've all seen it if you've played. But I, 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 I think if you're going to draft a running back in the first round, he's a pretty solid bet for you. Another one to think about is Alex Taft out of NC State. He's got a great coach, and he's coached by Van. Um, he ran for close to 5,000 yards in 56 games, averaged 6.2 yards per carry, 13 touchdowns. Just solid. And he's a good kick returner and punt returner. He averaged like I think 28 yards per kick return, 15 per punt. Had both touchdowns on both sides. He's agile, fast. He's got solid hands. He's stupid, but I don't know that that's a big thing for a running back. He's not a team player or leader, but again, you're talking about a running back. You really don't, that's not going to be the dude for you, right? Another guy to think about, and he's kind of lower on the board than I thought he should be, is Tyson DeVito out of Louisiana Monroe. If you get this guy on a straight run, nobody's going to catch him. He's just that fast. He is really, really fast and agile. He's a good person, which is ironic because he comes out of the skeletal system. He's got good hands. Again, not the brightest, but he averaged like 5.4 yards per carry, had 47 touchdowns. He had to share the spotlight with a lot of people at Louisiana Monroe, but he still ran for over 2,800 yards. He doesn't fumble very often, and he's someone to keep an eye on. Another guy I'm pretty high on is Johnny Watson. I don't think he's a first round. He's definitely a third round pick, but again, ran for close to 2,800 yards, 4.8 yards per carry. Didn't really fumble. He can come out of the backfield and catch things pretty well. He's a good kick returner. He's fast and he's agile. He's strong. He's got good hands. He's smarter than the other two I've called dumb, but and again, intelligence is not a thing for a running back. He's just a great person. If he's around in the third round, I'll take a flyer on him. Now, the next guy I'm going to talk about is actually a conundrum to me. So, those of you know I coach Maryland. I'm not sure how Kevin Batiste is supposedly going to go undrafted, maybe his height or his weight or whatever, but I think if you're in the third or fourth round and you see Kevin Batiste still there, I would go after him. He is a solid running back. I kind of think that he may have dropped because if you're running back out of Maryland and you post big numbers, everyone bats their eye at that because they're like, well, everybody at Maryland posts big numbers. It would be kind of like getting a running back out of Washington State. But Batiste is a slightly different running back than all of those. He was a four-star. He's out of Robinson High School up in Fairfax. He appeared in 63 games. He started 53, and that's pretty amazing considering at Maryland. And he ran for close to 7,000 yards, averaged 5.4. He was hurt by touchdowns because his junior year they wouldn't let him get the ball near the end zone. So he only had 27 touchdowns, but he averaged almost 109 yards per game. Didn't fumble very often, and also had close to 1,000 yards receiving in his career. He can also return punts. He had 2 touchdowns there. So he's fast, agile, solid hands, good personality. He won the Heisman Trophy as a senior. He's a two-time Doak Walker Award winner. He's definitely not someone who should go undrafted. And I suspect that when all said and done and we finally seen the ratings, he's going to look a little bit like Clarence Arellano at Pittsburgh this year, who was the Rookie of the Year, who was a late draft pick, and he really came on and ran for over 1,000 yards as a rookie in Pittsburgh. So if you read into the lines, Terrell Bryant, I think, is a first round pick. I think you could take Alex Taffel. James Reed, I don't think so. If you're looking for another first round pick, other than the guys I just mentioned, look at George Enos out of Louisiana and Monroe. He's another guy he's got pretty good speed. He's got good strength. I definitely think he would be a good fit for your system if those are the things you want. I'm not going to go really deep into fullbacks. It's going to be like kickers for me, but I think that there's one guy in this class you probably want to look at if you're really thinking about trying to get somebody in the first round as a fullback, and that is probably Chester Spill out of Boise State. He is, I would probably say the combination of his strength and power, and I think he's got speed too, is someone you might really want to take a look at. He's not going to block for you really well, but that's going to be a common theme throughout most of these. I think the only really good blocker here is probably John Olsen. If he's in the fourth or fifth round, I'd go after him. Anthony Shepard is a out of the backfield type fullback. So if you're looking for a passing and catching fullback, he's probably a good pick for you. He did that at Maryland. Jamie Starnes out of Oklahoma is another one that you might want to take a look at. But again, I would say third through fifth round for both of them. The only guy I could potentially see going in the first 2 rounds would be Chester Spears. We're going to go over to guard. So the offensive line is pretty deep in this class. You're going to have a lot of good options here. So at guard, Alex Dong out of Clemson. Strong run blocker. He's smart. He's got great positional awareness. I think he'll do a pretty good job at stopping edge rushers or inside speed rushers. I think he's solid in the top 10. I mean, I could see someone drafting him and be pretty happy with him. I think there's not much I can say negative about him. He's definitely not a top 5 pick, but a top 10 pick, especially if you're looking for a guard. Roger McKnight, um, I feel like he's a high second round pick, but he's got good pass blocking and strength, and those are the things that matter to you. I could see you taking him in the first, maybe the second half of the first, but he's someone that I think you would get what you want out of there with him. Roger McKnight, I just did him. David Meehan out of Maryland. It's always hard because these are the guys that are part of my team, but Meehan's probably stronger than Dong is, but he's raw. He's smart. He's not a leader though. There's some endurance concerns. I really think that he's more of a second or third round, and he'd be a steal in those rounds for you. just based on his strength. And if you have the ability to coach him up, I think he's going to turn into a pretty good guard over the years. Another guy to keep an eye out for, and I have a hard time with this one, is Ruben McSwain out of Wake Forest. I want to caveat, I think if his college stats or anything like his pro stats are going to be, he's a weak, and I'm talking about a guard, he's weak in strength. Speed is not great, his agility is not great, but again, you're talking about an interior lineman here. But what you get from him is probably one of the better blockers in this draft and one of the smarter linemen in this draft. So if you have a late round pick, I would definitely look at him. Johnny Frick is another guy you should probably look at in the late rounds, or if he's available in free agency. Again, he's pretty strong and he's just consistently good. Tackle again is extremely deep. If you're looking, if you need a tackle, I think this is the year that you might want to try to get one. We'll start with Alexander Armstrong. I think he's a top 10 pick. He's easily probably the strongest person in this draft. He's fast off the line. He's a SOA product out of Florida. He's got pretty good positional awareness, but he's a subpar blocker. He's raw, but he's a type of raw you can take and maybe stick him on the right tackle, and then over time he becomes a really good left tackle. But he will blow linemen off the line. He's just that strong. Nobody's gonna outmuscle him. Um, James Major out of Miami, Florida, again a product of Gary's Miami team. He's definitely a first rounder for me. If you want a strong, semi-fast pass blocker, I think that he's probably one of the best choices you can make in this draft at tackle. Um, the only concern I have with him is he's not that bright. And I'm being generous there. He's really not. He's not book smart, and that could translate into him making some bad decisions. McManus out of North Texas is another guy that I'm pretty high on. So Major is a pass blocking specialist. McManus is a run blocking specialist. They're very similar to each other. So if you want someone who can power your rushing game, and you're not doing a lot of pulls or things where he needs speed, I think he's a first round pick for you. Again, I wouldn't get him in the top half. I'd try to get him in the second half if you could. Roger Burkett is out of Ball State. He doesn't feel like a first rounder to me. He feels like a second rounder. Uh, he's average in the pass blocking. I think he knows his position very well. He's strong, he's smart, but he doesn't have the speed and agility that you'd expect out of a first rounder. Um, the next guy I'm pretty high on is Robert Janes. He needs you need to put him on a cardio program. He's a little bit slow. But if you look past that, he's probably the best overall technique tackle in this draft. He can run and pass block equally well. He's not the strongest, but he's strong enough. But again, his cardio leaves a little bit to be desired. So at tackle, you want someone who has a little bit more speed, but you could probably move him on the inside, and he'd probably do really well. I really like him out of Florida State. So um, Frankie Nettles, um, he's like a poor version of Armstrong. He's strong, he's fast, he's raw. I would get him in the second or third round, and then I would take the time to develop him. Um, but he's definitely a good second or third round pick, and I think you'd get pretty good return though. Utah's Kevin Royal, he's a solid late first, maybe early second. Good strength, knows his position, can run and pass block equally as well. Uh, Scouts worry about his agility and his competitive file, and he's definitely not someone who's going to lead your offensive lineman. But again, if he's there late in the first, I don't think you're taking too much of a jump, or in the second round. I think he's a pretty solid person to go after. As you look later in the draft, a couple names will pop up. Daniel Quinn is someone just to kind of look at. He's a solid run blocker. I think you get quite a bit out of him. A guy who I could see kind of sneaking upwards in the draft is Stephen Branch out of ULM or Louisiana Monroe. Uh, there's some concerns around his agility and hands, but he's a strong pass blocker and he's got really good strength. So again, he's someone that could sneak upwards quite easily. Willie Owen out of Cincinnati is another guy that I think could sneak upwards quite easily. Um, but again, you're just going to have to invest in him. He's really, really strong. He's a great athlete, but you're going to have to take some time to develop his skill in blocking. Um, the only other guy that you might want to really take a good hard look at is Ramiro Therio out of Oregon. He's another guy. I'd take him later though than the third or fourth. He's like a fifth or sixth round pick. And then I think you'll see some pretty good return on him. He is pretty agile. He's pretty fast. If you're doing a lot of pulls or things where the tackles need to get out to the side, he's definitely someone who's going to help enable you to do that. Center, again, is another deep area in this draft. I think that you can't really go wrong with some of these options. To me, Charles Ramsey, he's a insanely strong pass blocker, capable of holding his own with the run. I think he's a second half of the first round pick uh, because what you're getting with him is, again, his strength and his ability to block, but he doesn't have great endurance and he's not a leader on the line, which you normally want out of a center. A guy who I could see slipping upwards into the first round is Tyler Hilton out of Texas Tech. He's insanely strong. Uh, he's much better against the run. His pass blocking is a little bit of a concern, but depending on how much you value agility, intelligence, and speed, um, if you value those highly, you might want to take him in the third. If you don't, and you want someone who's strong and good against the run, you may take him in the first. Um, as we get later in the draft, Alan Bobo out of Virginia Tech is another guy to look at. He's got not so good agility, but he's solid across the board. And honestly, he's someone by the second or third year probably would be starting on your line. Kind of reaching near the end would probably be William Hartness. Uh, I would wait for free agency or late in the draft to take him, but again, he's a smart, strong, and solid pass blocker who I think you'll be able to do it. A lot of these guys in the second and third round are solid. Um, you're not going to run into many issues. The only thing I would say is people like Harold Martin and Arthur Zink, you might just want to kind of steer a little bit away from them. Tight end, this one is interesting to me. Tight end is an emerging role within our league. I don't think that Jonathan Derrick is actually the best tight end in this draft. Um, he's got good speed, great hands, he's agile, he's a good blocker. I kind of view him more as a late first, early second. If you're trying to take him in the top 10, I think you're reaching. But I do think that, especially in the short to medium passing game, he's going to be a really good pick for you. Just I wouldn't pick him in the first round. Uh, Tobias Moore's got insane strength, like lineman's type strength. He's a great blocker. He's not really a great receiver though, but he's serviceable. Just to give you an idea, is he's had like 162 pancakes in 4 seasons and only given up 1 sack. If you're looking for a guy to do run blocking for you, he's definitely the guy that you want to draft, and I could see him going in the first round for that reason alone. William Zavala is out of Virginia. Good strength, brains. He's got a great motor. His speed is not there, and his hands are okay. He's got decent blocking. To me, he's more of a third or fourth round pick. He's not a first round pick. Thomas Stewart, again, he's all around solid. He's not fast. He's got some endurance issues. I think he's a bit of a reach in the first. But I want to caveat that by saying that he's another one of these guys who had like 100 pancakes in 4 seasons and never gave up a sack. So if you're looking for a blocking option, he's definitely a guy for you. Now, two people are intriguing, actually probably three, but Nick Bowden out of Maryland. If you're looking for a receiving tight end who can go out deep, he's probably the guy for you. He's a converted wide receiver, so you need to take that into account, which means that he's still learning the position of tight end. But he has great speed. His hands are off the chart. He's got receiver type hands. His agility is probably a little bit less than what it should be, but he's smart. But if you want someone to block, he's not your guy. Um, Billy Craig is like Nick Bowden. He's a receiving tight end. I think you could do a lot of good things with him, but he's more the small to medium range as opposed to Nick, who's more medium to long. Uh, he had a very productive career at Oklahoma. He has off the chart hands. I mean, I think his hands are going to end up probably being elite level. His agility is probably elite level, but he's not very fast and he's a weak blocker. But if you don't care about that and you're playing short passes where agility and hands matter, I would go for him. He is a really solid pick, but maybe not in the first, maybe like the third or fourth. Sam King out of UNLV. He's one of those where, again, he played at UNLV. I think that hurt him, but he's an all around good tight end. Should probably be higher, but again, he played for a bad team, so he can catch, block. He is overall a very solid tight end. Again, a third or fourth pick would be probably appropriate for him. He's not going to sneak up into the first, whereas depending on what you want, Nick Bowden or Billy Craig I could see them sneaking upwards. Um, Wide receiver is a very immensely talented class, and we probably say this every year, right? But if you're looking at the top 10, uh, again, another one of Gary's receivers, Wilmer Alvarez out of Miami, Florida. I think this dude's elite, but what I worry about with him is personality. I don't think the work ethic is there. I don't think the competitive fire is there, but um, he's got the speed in the hands. So if you were going for a receiver, he's probably one of the two I could see going in the top 10, candidly. Paul McCartney, uh, he's out of Ohio State. I think he's still learning his position. He's fast. He can definitely catch. The Ohio State system is one that throws the ball a lot. Um, his agility is not quite where it needs to be, and he lacks the endurance to be an every down wide receiver. He's a little bit of a reach for me in the first round. I think he's a good solid second or third round pick. Eric Herrera out of Oklahoma State. This is Frankie's team. He has elite speed in agility, but I don't think his hands are quite where they need to be. But again, if you're going long and you're okay with him maybe dropping the ball every once in a while, uh, he's a first round pick solidly. Work ethic is a little bit questionable, but I definitely think that he's not a first half of the first round. He's a second half of the first round pick, maybe going into the second round. But his speed and his agility alone compensate for really his hands and his endurance. Um, Richard Morgan is out of Louisville. Honestly, his speed and positional awareness is likely what's going to get him drafted in the first round. But you just need to bear in mind you're going to have to work on his hands and his agility. If it was me drafting, I would try to get him in the second or third round. I don't think he's going to be there in the second or third round. I think someone's going to take a flyer on his speed once they start to scout him. I do think he has some endurance issues that you're going to have to really think about. Probably the best hands in this class is Timothy Reddy out of Washington. He's also, in my mind, got great agility. So if you're looking for a slot receiver, I would go after him. I think he's probably got the best hands on the offensive side of the ball. He's just not going to be fast. So if you're looking for slot or short passing, he's probably the guy for you. Um, as we get into the later rounds, two names that you probably want to keep on your radar is David DeMarco out of Oklahoma State, and we'll talk about him first. So David DeMarco out of Oklahoma State is a poorer version of Eric Herrera. He's fast, definitely could start. Agility and hands are solid, but if you're looking for speed, he's definitely a guy you want to keep on your radar because he is really, really fast. Probably not as fast as, say, Eric Herrera, but um, he's a guy I could see being drafted in maybe the fourth or fifth round. Mike Mosel out of Mississippi State is another guy to keep on your radar. He's got good speed. He does everything pretty well, but his endurance, I think, is what's going to keep him from being drafted earlier because he's not an every down player. So that's kind of what the draft looks like so far for the offensive side of the bar. I will talk about kickers real quick. I always feel kind of weird about talking about kickers because nobody drafts a kicker in the first round, unless you're scouting and you're doing a gag. Um, I don't think that there are many kickers in this draft that should get drafted. I'll just throw that out. I think you want to look at Eric Stark out of Georgia. Uh, I think he has an insane leg, but like most strong leg kickers, I think he's going to struggle with accuracy. Um, San Diego State's Stuart Taylor is, I think, really the only truly draftable kicker here. He's solid accuracy wise, and he's got a pretty strong leg. And he's had the consistency across his college career that says that he probably would be a really good kicker. If you're just looking for straight up accuracy and you don't care about leg strength, probably look at Ricardo Coco out of Florida International. I think his leg is it's going to take a few years before he can start hitting the high 40s, 50s, and 60s. Whereas I suspect that Stock can probably hit 60s right now, and that you give it a year or two, and the kid from San Diego State, Stuart Taylor, will be doing the same. So that's it for now. Again, the draft file will be published tonight with tonight's sim. You all will be able to see this. Just bear in mind the projections may change a little bit. The draft file is the draft file, but how the game interprets the projections, it will likely move them around. So some things that show up as a first round in this video may not actually be a first round. We see the file tonight, but I'm basing this on what I know of them from SNCFL and what I suspect that they will be like in the pros. I've gotten it right quite a few times, but again, there's always the chance of missing somebody. And I'll talk about that later in a future video about how I look at these pro players and how I choose to draft them. But that's the offensive side of the ball. I will do the defensive video. It won't be today. It'll probably be tomorrow, sometime later, before the draft, and then I'll do the gem video where I talk about these are the people who nobody is probably looking at that you probably should be looking at, and then of course if you are one of the few people already looking at them, you're probably going to hate me for saying those names because now everybody's going to look at them. So let me know what you'd like to see, and let me know if you have any thoughts. Overall, I think the offensive side of the ball, if I had to go through it real quick, quarterback this is an accuracy class. This is not a arm strength class. Running back, you got some really solid speedsters and burners in this class. So if you're looking for speed, I think this is a class for you. And there are some really good scat backs as well, like Alex Taft, Kevin Batiste are just two that come to round. Johnny Watson's just a good overall back. Georgino's, Terrell Bryant, even Alex Taft to a certain extent. Tyson DeVito are all really, really fast backs. Fullback, again, Chester Spear is probably a freak when it comes to fullback. If you want to have someone to run the ball, I think he's definitely it, especially up the middle. But he also has speed. But Jamie Starnes, Anthony Shepard are really going to be more your out of the backfield type backs. And then people like John Olsen are going to be more blocking type backs. Uh, Offensive line, I think at guard, Alex Strong makes sense to me. He's someone I'm pretty high on. I think that he's definitely a top 10 pick. And then just figuring out what you want will be key for the other ones. But guard's a pretty deep class. Tackle's extremely deep. You're going to be able to find some good value here throughout the draft. Alexander Armstrong is a very real type of strength in speed. But again, just bear in mind what you're getting with him. He's raw. He's gonna need a year or two just to develop, but he's someone who I could see being a Hall of Famer. Center Charles Ramsey again is the guy in this class. Definitely, if you're looking to pick in the first round, I would definitely look at him pretty hard. Tyler Hilton's another guy to look at. From a tight end perspective, already talked about this. Thomas Stewart is someone that I'm pretty high on, as is Nick Bowden and Billy Craig. But again, I tend to value receiving tight ends over blocking tight ends. And then at wide receiver, again, an extremely deep class. There's a lot of potential in this class, and I didn't cover all these guys, but Wilmer Alvarez and Eric Herrera to me are two of the guys who really are game changers. And then if you're getting later on the draft, definitely David DeMarco is a guy to take a look at. So that's it for now. Hit a like if you like the video. Let me know what you'd like to see. I will do a video at some point talking about how I look at each one of these. Like when I look at Wilmer Alvarez, why am I saying that despite these things? Um, but again, I don't think I'm going to be wrong here. Because normally what I'll do is I'll look at the media grades, then I'll look at the attributes and go, well, that doesn't make sense. How can you be A's and then be F's here? And then I would hop over and start looking at like scouting to see what the scouts say about them, which we already saw that, and then look at the combine. That doesn't make sense. I think Alvarez is a lot faster than a 4.6. But kind of get into some of the other things like when we look at shuttle speeds and stuff like that. I do like that they added the Wonderlic score, which is always nice because now you can look at this and you can say, hey, look, when Darren is calling a guy stupid, what does that mean? Well, he's got a 4 Wonderlic. That generally is to mean that he's not the brightest tool in the shed. But I'll do a future video on that. But if you have any questions, let me know. And again, we're always looking for new coaches. Go to SimNation, either on Slack or on the forums. And the website is, of course, WWPF.us. And a quick shout out to Wolverine Studios again for doing such a good job with making this product. And looking forward to the future releases. And if you want to watch our draft, I will, as we get closer to it, I will put it up. We're still talking about who's going to host it, whether it's Frankie or me. I think we're going to do it on Frankie's channel. It's just a good thing to watch. He does it live on Twitch. So have a great day, and we'll talk to you later.